I don't really know how to start this video. I have never made such videos before. And I've been preparing for this one for quite a long time. But I decided to share my story with you. So please stay with me because it can help you on many levels. Not necessarily when you are dealing with a medical situation like I did, but with any challenge that is extremely hard for you to go through and you don't see a way out. And my why for this video is because I am certain that I am speaking to you from my experience, from a healed place, not from my wound anymore. So from that perspective, it is easier to share even the hardest moments you have gone through. And I hope they help you. Or they help someone close to you, like your partner, loved one, spouse, parent, family member, friend, whoever who is going through something very hard at the moment. So my story began between 2013 and 2014. I finally got pregnant, and this was a long-awaited baby. I had already had 2 sons before, and I waited for this baby for around 2 years. I went through some medical treatment to get pregnant, and I finally got pregnant in late 2013. And somewhere around the 5th week, I felt that my body had some sensations similar to the sensations I had in the previous pregnancies. But these sensations came every 2 days, every 3 days. So I wasn't really sure if it was the fact that I had become pregnant or something else. It was a bit of a different feeling. And in a few days, I ended up at a doctor's appointment, and I learned that most probably I was pregnant, but that pregnancy would be completely different than the previous ones. I had to do blood work, and it turned out that yes, indeed, I was pregnant, but most probably I would never give birth to the baby. After a few days, I ended up in hospital where they let me listen to the heartbeat of my baby, but they said that it wasn't a regular pregnancy. It was a Caesarian section scar pregnancy called an ectopic pregnancy. I wouldn't like to overwhelm you with the details, but I want to share with you the general things so that you knew what an ectopic pregnancy was. I'm not sure if you are familiar with this medical condition, so let me just tell you a few details without overwhelming you. A Caesarian section scar pregnancy, called an ectopic pregnancy, grows in the scar after a previous Caesarian section. And I had had 2 such sections before. And I realized after talking to the doctors that my pregnancy got stuck on the way to the uterus, and that it is growing in the scar. But anyway, one of the doctors assured me that the pregnancy, as he said, could migrate to the uterus anyway. As it turned out later, it could not be possible. And what is very important in that pregnancy is that when the baby gets stuck in the scar, the tissue there doesn't nourish it properly. There are no, the veins there are not the same as the veins in the uterus. That the environment in the scar is completely different. And what's more, you learn that this pregnancy is both a danger to the baby as well as a danger to your life. And this experience was something unbelievably difficult for me. And even today, when I'm talking about it, although I have healed from it, sharing the details with you is indeed very difficult. And I'd like to tell you that this is not to gain pity from anyone or sympathy or to evoke any feelings in anyone which could overwhelm you. But there are so many things which came after this experience that I'd like to share them with you today. I'd also like to make a disclaimer that it is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. Please excuse any mistakes in the medical jargon. I'm not too familiar with it. This is just my lived experience, which I decided to share with you. And my other why for telling you this story is also the fact that more than a year ago I started sharing my story on social media, and I realized that so many people need psychological, mental, spiritual support. And I really hope that this episode can give you that. This experience helped me see so many things differently. So please stay with me until the end, because there are quite a few lessons which taught me a lot about life and which can also benefit you. And if you wanted to share any of your feelings or stories, experiences with me, please do it in the comments below. I will be very happy to talk to you, to answer back, and to share my experience with you also in the comments. And if you like, you can share my story with anyone who may need it today. So, first of all, when I started this story, I realized that this was me who had to go through it. I remember myself standing in the hospital corridor alone, looking through the window and seeing the sun outside and having so much sadness and grief in my heart. And when I was in hospital, my doctor came to me and said that there are a few facts which he had to share with me. So first of all, he said that they were completely unprepared for such a situation, that they checked some medical journals, and it turned out that, as far as they told me, I was the 90th something woman in the world documented in a medical journal somewhere who had such a pregnancy, documented pregnancy. Second of all, they didn't know what solution to take. They had to consult each other in hospital and decide about my future. What's more, they told me that I had to solve one thing, which was a huge moral dilemma for me. And that is, I had to decide whether to terminate my pregnancy before the 20th week of the pregnancy ends, or whether I wanted to still remain pregnant and wait for what would happen. And then after a few days, they said that because they don't know what to do with me, we have to wait, and that it would be best if the baby simply stopped being nourished in the uterus, in the scar, and naturally stopped living. After some time, they sent me home because nothing was changing, and they said that because me being in hospital under stress may not be the best solution, they would send me just for the weekend home so that I could relax in my natural environment. And I went home. And during that weekend, the pregnancy stopped being alive. But I didn't know it. On Monday, I went to hospital again, and after an examination, it turned out that the pregnancy was over. And on the same day, I got the information that my doctors decided to do the following. They decided not to do any surgery, and also because I did not go through any miscarriage, they would like to introduce the solution which is called the involution of the fetus, of the pregnancy. And at that time, I had no idea what involution meant. After a few days, they explained everything, and I knew that I had to go through the process of my pregnancy dead inside, drying out. It turned out that I had to go through my lost pregnancy for the next 6 months. And after these 6 months, I had to wait another 4 for a medical treatment which would give me the information that I was healthy. So from the end of 2013 to spring 2014, I walked every single day with a lost pregnancy in my womb. I literally counted minutes, but what that period gave me is something that will stay with me forever. And now I would like to share it with you. So first of all, when I returned home after my stay in hospital, I started praying. I didn't know how to, because the pain was unbearable. I felt so much grief, and I opened my prayer book, which I got on some occasion many years before. And you know, when I opened that prayer book, I found a picture inside. And this was a picture which I got somewhere at a religious ceremony somewhere a few years before. And it is this picture. It's a picture of a Kenyan boy riding a donkey, and the inscription below reads as follows: "The one who is patient possesses everything." And this has become my life motto for many years, and still is. This picture signaled that I would have to learn the lesson of patience. But unbelievable patience. I took time off work. It lasted for 4 months, and then after that time I returned to work. But still, the involution was going on. And every single day I practiced the art of patience. And this lesson told me that in some life situations, we can't hurry anything. We can't push forward if the circumstances don't allow it. We just have to accept it. So this is the first lesson I took after this happened to me. And I also wanted to share that this was the first conscious journey in my life. I can freely say that before I lived my life somewhat unconsciously. During that 6 months, I had to go to the forest on long walks, processing my grief, being in touch with nature, and going inside, spending time mostly with myself, looking at the white wall of my bedroom, reading books, thinking and praying and looking at this picture. And you know, then I was completely unaware that when I finish this medical condition and everything ends, I will face another huge challenge in my life, that is a relationship crisis, which would ultimately end in my divorce 10 years later. I was completely unaware that such things, two things, can happen to me at a row, one after another. I hoped that after having gone through the loss of my baby, which was a long-awaited baby, one I had prepared for around 2 years, another difficult life situation would happen to me. So my next lesson I took from the loss of my baby is that extremely difficult situation can happen to me as well. A thing you are completely unprepared for. You are healthy, you are fit, you prepare well, you do everything you can to have your health in the best condition, and yet something so painful happens to you. So the second lesson was that each of us can go through something heartbreaking, difficult, challenging, but ultimately, with our willpower, with our conscious choices, we can heal from them and come out on the other side as healed, peaceful human beings. So this is the second lesson I learned. But what is also very crucial to me is that although my healing journey, my proper healing journey, started in 2015 after I went through a huge marital crisis, the beginnings of my healing journey are actually here, when I lost my baby. It was then that I started growing as a person, as a woman, as a mother. And here I see the first footsteps I took in my own evolution. So the evolution of my pregnancy helped me grow. And I'm a completely different person now. My doctors told me that if the pregnancy is still alive, it will threaten my life, not only my health. That my health was in serious danger. And it was a dilemma which I couldn't solve in any way. I could not decide about terminating my pregnancy in any way. This was something that came to me when I was in hospital. I realized that I can't decide. It's just beyond my capacity. And from this came my next life lesson. The lesson that I had to surrender. That as long as I am in resistance to the fact that I am going through one of the most difficult moments in my life, I have to accept it, and I have to let go of the fear that was actually animal fear. I would have medical students come when I was being examined, and they talked about me, and I was a case, an interesting case for them. And I'm not blaming anyone here, but I got no psychological help throughout the whole time of my pregnancy and treatment afterwards. They were simply learning that it's possible to treat a woman with the method of involution when there was no miscarriage. And when I was lying on this hospital bed, being examined, shaking, crying, I realized that I was just a patient. One who had to just surrender to what was going on, because nothing was up to me. I was dependent on everyone, on my doctors, on the hospital staff, and on science. So, dear friend, if you are going through something which is beyond your capacity now, which you feel as something extremely, extremely heartbreaking, painful, I want to give you my words of support, but also tell you that we are unbelievable human beings, and we can go through unbearable moments, and so can you. And if you would like to share your story, as I said, please do it in the comments below. I think one of the best things we can do is to serve others through our stories, because this way they can feel they are seen, and this way they can feel supported and heal. Maybe thanks to our stories, they can collapse some time of their healing. So I will appreciate every message that comes from you. So I have told you about a few lessons of mine that I learned on that path, but there is also something else. My lost pregnancy taught me that I had been far from my spirit, and it helped me enter the spiritual world. It helped me see things at a completely different level. It helped me expand my consciousness. It helped me realize that we are all connected, that many of us are in pain, which we quite often can't understand, that we share the same human experience. And that when we enter the spiritual world, we can heal quicker. And why? Because we heal through our awareness. And also, in that experience, I realized that our spirituality is not only about our mind and heart, but also about our body. And I started taking up many practices which taught me so many beautiful things about the human body, about our well-being, holistic methods of healing the mind and the body. And through that spiritual world, I also started meeting beautiful souls. I started having deep conversations, and ultimately I started sharing my story on social media, including YouTube, where you are with me now. So this is one more thing that came to me after this horrible experience. And of course, there are other things which came to me later on as well. The next lesson my lost pregnancy taught me is that I have enormous strength and resilience, and that I can process grief from beginning till end, feeling every single emotion on the way. And it was one of the most profound lessons, life lessons for me. And now, whenever I deal with something very difficult, I remember that I went through so much and that I made it. And so can you. The next thing is the lesson to stay discerning. When I saw my doctors around me, completely unaware what to do with me, I realized that there are some life situations in which you are completely alone. And that your instinct can lead you to the best choices. And that you have to listen to your morals. You have to listen to your so-called guts. I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to your doctors by any means. It's just that sometimes even doctors are wrong. I realize that also doctors may not know what to do with you. And that ultimately it's you who saves you. And this lesson stayed with me forever. And there are two more things I would like to share with you today. The next lesson I took was that I should have shared my situation with more people. I should release my emotions. I should consult a therapist. I should surround myself with more women. But the pain, the grief was so overwhelming that I started suppressing a lot of my emotions. I shared my experience with only a few people, a few of my family members and my friends. They were unprepared and quite overwhelmed by my story. So sometimes they were not ready to listen or embrace my experience because it also hurt them. But anyway, this life lesson I can share with you is not to be afraid of sharing your life experience with people. And now I do it on social media, which is also a form of healing. And my dear friend, the last thing I took from that very difficult experience is this. In 2014, I got pregnant again, and I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy boy who is now my third son. I have 3 sons. So what my lost pregnancy taught me is that beautiful things are still ahead of me. And this lesson has stayed with me since then. And I also hope that it can bring light to you now. As you can see, my lost pregnancy taught me many things. These were all lessons on patience, resilience, strength, surrender, discernment, but also hope. Beautiful things can happen to us after we go through something extremely challenging. As I close this video, I know it might have felt overwhelming to you. This has been the hardest video I have ever made, but I decided to share it with you because my biggest loss was the deepest lesson for me. And I also want you to know that in your biggest struggles, there is always a spark of light, and you are never alone. So dear friend, if you are facing something very challenging, extremely painful, difficult now, please know that healing is possible. And thank you very much for staying with me till the end. I really appreciate it. Once again, I would like to invite you to open a conversation in the comments below. If you like, you can share my episode with anyone who might need it today. And see you soon.